is that Sean Jeffers has resigned as our vice president. We are very thankful for his service over the years, and are grateful that we hope to see him soon in the future at future FIG events. We did recently vote in Kat Lyons as our vice president, so she stepped back up into that role. So we are going forward with that. We do also have a couple committees started, and those are open to our members. We have the programming committee and the projects committee. So if you are interested in joining those, please get in touch with us. You can also go to our website to either leave us a message or to sign up and get a new membership on there as well. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Scott.
Okay, and I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker today. But first of all, sorry about the eye, since everybody's been asking. I am actually in training for my first mixed martial arts match, and I made the mistake of sparring this weekend with a 15-year pro. And that is I would say God's honest truth, but I probably shouldn't use that phrase with this group. But so for those of you who don't know me, I moved away from Cincinnati 11 years ago, but I've always stayed a supporter of and involved with the Cincinnati Free Inquiry Group. And that's because it played such an important role in my life when I lived in Cincinnati. It was the place where I found out that there were really interesting, caring, nice people who were non-believers like me. And it not only is a place where I went to very interesting events like this, but it gave me a sense of community while I lived there in Cincinnati. So I've always continued to support FIG. If you are not involved with FIG, if this is your first time, I really encourage you to take a look at it because it's a great organization and they do great events like having Ron Millar come and speak. Now, Ron, I can give you his background. He is the political impact coordinator for the Center for Freethought Equality. He has more than 30 years, although you would never know it looking at him, of activism and as an educator in Washington, D.C. and politics, including working at the Secular Coalition for America before he came and worked for the Center for Freethought Equality that he'll tell you more about. He has a PhD in church-state separation before the Supreme Court. So, I mean, Ron is an incredibly knowledgeable person. But, you know, Ron is really not a self-promoting person. So I just want to tell you how incredible Ron is. His credentials aside, he's one of the most effective people that I've come across in the humanist and non-theist movement. Before Ron was involved, I don't think this is an exaggeration. Humanism and non-theism was not even a blip on the political radar screen. Yeah. Ron's been able to accomplish in a handful of years, which he'll tell you about all these accomplishments, and if he doesn't tell you about them, I'm going to start asking questions at the end, has been absolutely, truly amazing. And the fact that we are actually now starting to have influence on Capitol Hill is incredible. And I would just like to turn this over to Ron. Now is the political season. This is an exciting time for us to hear from someone like Ron, and I'm really excited to have him here. You're even welcome to unmute your phones and give him a little welcome to the Cincinnati Free Inquiry Group. Thank you very much, Ron. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Scott.
And let me also just say, I'm sorry, Ron, please put your questions into the chat function as we go. Ron, do you prefer me to save the questions until the end?
Yeah, unless I'm unclear about something, then people should stop me. Yeah, but the end is better. Yeah. But
please, as we go, put your questions in and I'll keep track of them and then I'll ask them at the end. Okay, so throw in your questions as we go. Thank you.
All right, I really appreciate getting time to talk to the Free Inquiry Group. I'll be talking about the work of the Center for Freethought Equality and also talking about how to engage atheists and humanists and our nonprofit groups in electoral politics. So I'll give about a 20-minute presentation and then we'll open up for questions and answers. Into the chat, I dropped links to the various references that I'll be talking about. So you'll be able to see those and link off to them. They're really good resources, as you'll soon hear. So again, I'm Ron Millar. I'm the Political Impact Coordinator for the Center for Freethought Equality. And The Center for Freethought Equality is the advocacy and political arm of the American Humanists Association. So what does that mean to be the advocacy and political arm of AHA? So as a nonprofit, the American Humanists Association has some limitations in what it can do in the political and electoral arenas. So, and I'll be talking about those more in detail later. So to remove these limitations, the Center for Freethought Equality was formed in 2004. It's a different type of nonprofit, which is allowed to lobby elected officials as its primary mission. Rachel Deitch, who I hope you know, is our great lobbyist. The Center for Freethought Equality, unlike other nonprofits, can also have a membership political action committee. And our PAC is the Freethought Equality Fund, which can endorse and provide financial support to political candidates. As a membership PAC, only members of the Center for Freethought Equality can be informed about the activities of our PAC. This federal PAC was formed in 2013. Now, membership in the Center for Freethought Equality is free, so I really urge you to join so you can be kept up to date with all our activities. And again, there's a link to our website in the chat room. So these three organizations provide the tools necessary to help increase our community's political clout. Education with the American Humanist Association, advocacy with the Center for Freethought Equality, and elections with our PAC. We do this work to diminish the bias against the atheist and humanist community, advance evidence-based public policy, preserve the secular nature of our government, and promote social justice. This evening, I want to give you some information about the political advances made possible by the Center for Freethought Equality and what you can do as an individual and as a member of a non-theist nonprofit group in the electoral and political arena. As I said earlier, there are limitations on what nonprofit organizations can do during elections, but those restrictions should not prevent your group from taking allowable actions. With certain restrictions, nonprofit organizations can and should be engaged in the political and electoral process. The key restriction is that nonprofits cannot make or appear to make endorsements of candidates for elected office. So tonight, we won't be talking about individual candidates or even political parties, so please refrain from doing so in the chat and during the question and answer too. Now, you might not be very familiar with the Center for Freethought Equality, which is completely understandable, but you might know about our accomplishments. So we've had 4 major successes, which I'll briefly review this evening. Because of our efforts, the taboo about atheists running for and holding elected office is now known to be defunct. Congressman Jared Huffman announced he's a humanist and agnostic. He's the only public member of our community in Congress. The Congressional Freethought Caucus was created, and we've had a 900% increase in the number of state legislators who identify with our community since 2016. So first, let's talk about the atheist taboo. In 2017, I was talking to a candidate running for the state legislature in a very red district in West Texas. And he told me he couldn't possibly be public about being an atheist because he lost 2/3 of his constituents just by his party identification, and even more because he was pro-choice and LGBTQ friendly. So he said it was just impossible to be openly public because he didn't want to lose a single more vote. He knew he was going to lose the election, but he didn't want to lose it as badly as he thought he might if he was an atheist. So I thought after all those qualifiers, who was left for him to lose? And as a good atheist, I wanted data on the subject. So the Center for Freethought Equality purchased some space on an election day poll in 2018, and we had a survey company create questions to provide an answer. The result found that voters who favored Democratic candidates and were pro-choice and pro-marriage equality would overwhelmingly vote for an atheist candidate. 72% said that being an atheist would make no difference in their vote. And then an additional 10% said that they'd be even more likely to vote for the atheist candidate. So the numbers were even more favorable for a candidate who identified as agnostic or non-religious rather than atheist. Now, there's still a pool of voters out there, who said they were less likely to vote for the unidentified non-theist candidate. So the bias still exists against members of our community, and we still have a lot of work to do. However, the taboo is gone. Case in point, we were instrumental in having Congressman Jared Huffman announce that he's a humanist and agnostic. He has the best district in the country. It runs from just north of the Golden Gate Bridge above San Francisco all the way to the Oregon and hugs the coast. So he has the best wine country and weed country in America. And he often shares wine with us when we have meetings, but not the latter. So how did he announce that he was an agnostic and humanist? So in 2017, he returned a candidate questionnaire to our PAC, and he had an intriguing response to how he identified with regard to religion. So I followed up with an email exchange to introduce myself and explore the topic. And finally, the email messages culminated in a dinner invitation with the Congressman, Roy Speckart, who's the executive director of the American Humanist Association, and myself. At dinner, we discussed the goals of our movement and the need for elected officials to publicly identify with our community. He was convinced and agreed to be public about being a humanist and agnostic. And after he announced, he received a great deal of positive feedback from his constituents and colleagues. In fact, he received such positive feedback from his colleagues that he decided to form a caucus in Congress. This was one of the ideas that we had discussed at our earlier dinner together. Huffman arranged an organizing meeting at his townhouse, and Roy and I met with several members of Congress to form the caucus. We had a second meeting, which was held at the American Humanist Association headquarters, and that produced the necessary paperwork to create the Congressional Freethought Caucus. It was born at the AHA. The caucus is a membership group within Congress to foster science and evidence-based public policy, and it provides a forum for members of Congress to learn about the atheist and humanist movement. There's currently 12 members, and we keep on growing, and they're doing good work up on Capitol Hill. Our last major accomplishment is that we've identified over 50 state legislators who are members of our atheist and humanist community and are willing to be public about it, which is the key thing. There's a lot more who aren't. So this is up from just 5 state legislators prior to the 2016 elections. And that's where we come up with that 900% increase that we tout a lot. But it's really not that impressive because we need another 1,500 or so to reach parity with our population. So we've got a whole lot of work to do. So I can't rest easy on my 900% increase. Okay, so that's what the Center for Freethought Equality has accomplished, and I urge you to join the Center for Freethought Equality. Membership is free, and as a member, you'll learn about what our PAC is doing for the 2020 elections and beyond. So now let's explore what you as an individual can do, besides joining the Center for Freethought Equality, to advance the interests of our community in the electoral arena. First, you have to participate by voting, and not only in presidential elections, but in every election. You need to cast informed votes by researching candidates, not just at the top of the ticket, but for every contest on the ballot. And fortunately, there's great resources out there. The League of Women Voters does this great thing called Vote 411. It's a really good place to start. You can just plug in your address and they'll tell you about every measure and candidate that's going to be on your ballot. It's an excellent resource. Then once you find, and also the League of Women Voters naturally does a little questionnaire survey, so you get to learn a little bit about the candidates too. But if they don't cover the issues that you're interested in, go to your various issue advocacy groups you support to see who they endorse and review their voter guides. Or if you want to take the opposite way, you can look at people who are diametrically opposed to your policy beliefs and look at their endorsements and voter guides and just vote opposite whatever they do. So you can multiple options to research your candidates. However, before you can vote, you got to be registered to vote and make sure you're still registered to vote if you've moved or if you've not voted recently. And there's another great resource, the Secular America Votes. Their website provides links to easily do both registration and check your registration. And I believe October 5th is the deadline to register in Ohio, and you can even vote in person the next day on the 6th to begin in-person voting. So deadlines are coming up. So once you're registered, then you actually have to cast your vote. Just thinking about it doesn't work. You need to make a plan to vote, especially this year. With the pandemic potentially limiting polling sites and the various man-made voter suppression things like slowing down the post office, a voter plan is more important than ever. So the first step in making a plan is knowing what the rules on voting are, and every state has a different set of rules. So NBC News has a nice site called Plan Your Vote, which I've also put in the chat. it links, provides the rules for each state on absentee voting, early voting, and more, voting registration. So once you know the rules, you can determine what's the best way for you to make your vote, make sure your vote is cast and counted this year. If you're concerned about going to the polls because of the pandemic and potential long lines, learn what the rules are about early voting and absentee voting in your state. If you decide to vote absentee, request your ballot now. Don't procrastinate. Once the ballot arrives, fill it out immediately and completely. If you're concerned about the post office delaying delivery, mail it in early or see if your jurisdiction offers drop boxes or other delivery systems. So make sure that your ballot is returned in the necessary time and manner to be counted. If you want to do in person at the polls, make sure you know where your polling place is. Again, with the pandemic, they might be consolidating places. And make a plan to schedule the time necessary to make sure you're able to cast your vote. So you should anticipate long lines so that you're not discouraged when you get there. And then we got feedback from some. Okay. So just and then Dan, can you mute yourself? Zavon. All right. I unmuted myself. All right, thanks. All right, so the key thing about getting to your polling place, assume that there's going to be long lines. The key thing is you get into line before the polling place closes, they have to let you in and vote. So don't worry about it. Just make sure you get there, allocate the time you need to vote. Now, sadly, that seems like a lot of work to simply vote and get your vote counted, but voting is really just the most basic and last step in getting your electoral outcomes that you want. To get the results you want, you also need to invest your time and money in the candidates you want to win. Think about how important it is that your candidates win and make a plan to invest in your time and money accordingly. Make a budget for how much money you can spend and how many hours you're going to volunteer. Then invest wisely in both. You can volunteer for individual candidates or for the political party of your choice. Volunteering is possible even during a pandemic. You can do no contact literature drops and get a nice walk-in too. From your home, you can do things like addressing postcards and phone banking. Use your smartphone to connect with a candidate's phone banking operations and talk to other voters. With the phone banking, you can volunteer for candidates across the country. You just gotta make sure you know what time zone you're calling because you wanna bring voters over. You don't wanna piss them off by calling too early or too late in the day. And the one positive about this pandemic is that people are generally home and many are eager to talk to somebody new. If you don't like talking to people, texting is a big thing now in campaigns. So again, use that smartphone to contact voters. I also encourage you to attend online and when safe in-person campaign events and wear t-shirts, buttons, lapel pins like I got here, and other swag that identifies you with the atheist and humanist community. This is a great way to increase our visibility. And if you invite friends and go as a group, it's even more effective. They'll start seeing us as a movement if they see enough of us out there. When possible, in a public forum, ask questions of the candidate that are important to our community and identify yourself as an atheist, humanist, agnostic, or whatever identifier you use. So use the candidate research you've done and make sure your like-minded friends and relatives are registered and have a plan to vote and are informed about the candidates. If they need help in voting, make sure you get them the resources they need. Use your personal contacts and social media to make these important connections to turn out more voters for your preferred candidates. So to sum up, as an individual, make a plan to vote, form and motivate your personal network, create a budget of your time and money to invest in candidates and implement these plans so that your vote. So I'll go into my final. The best resource is called Boulder Advocacy. And again, I put it into the chat. This is a project of the Alliance for Justice, which is a great group. They provide very detailed information and also have this great Ask an Expert for questions that you can get over the phone or by email, because there's lots of gray areas in election law, and they provide all this for free. So your group can do much more than you may think. But again, your group needs to make a plan and consider the time and money it can invest in these tasks. With just 36 days until the general election, many of these options are going to be too much to accomplish before November 3rd. But as I said before, you and your group should take time to place these projects on your calendar and discuss what kind of resources you can put into this. Since we don't teach civics that much in school, your organization should be a source of information about being engaged citizens. The links I provided up there could be provided to your membership and on your website, just as great resources to folks. So make sure you got Secular America Votes up there, and make sure that your members are aware of upcoming elections and the nonpartisan resources they need to make informed decisions. Even now, though, your first contacts should be with your group's members to make sure that they are registered and aware of voting options and the rules in your jurisdiction. This is something you can and should do now. For this election, we must really work hard to make sure that our community turns out in numbers higher than ever before. And your group has the names and contact information to help make this happen. So I urge you to reach out to your membership. Here are some other long-term projects that nonprofit organizations can do. You can conduct nonpartisan voter registration and get out the vote drives. Secular America Votes is a great resource for this. Your organization can send information packets to all the candidates about the issues that are important to your organization. This helps build visibility for our community and promotes the issues that are important to us. All this is about building visibility. We have to make sure that candidates and elected officials realize we are a constituency that needs to be addressed and considered. So your nonprofit can help do that. Your group can create candidate questionnaires and prepare voter guides. Now this one's a little trickier because there's lots of restrictions on what you can do. But again, Boulder Advocacy has the information, because you don't want to do things like reach out to just a handful of candidates. You got to talk to all the candidates or make an attempt to reach all the candidates. You know, the question that you provide shouldn't indicate the correct answer. You know, you don't ask the candidates to pledge their support for a various issue. But again, Boulder Advocacy just sets this out. And again, it's a great way to introduce yourself to candidates and get your members engaged. Your group could also create a legislative scorecard for incumbents. Like the questionnaires, this has to be done impartially and without coordination with elected officials, and should include a broad range of topics. So you never want to start your first scorecard during an election year. You got to show impartiality. So this should be an ongoing project. One of my favorites is your group could sponsor or co-sponsor candidate debates. Again, this has to be done impartially, and all candidates must be invited to participate. You know, if you're involved with a social or economic justice alliances, work with them to co-sponsor candidate debates and make this project a regular part of their programmatic work. Again, you know, if these tasks aren't already in your group's program pipeline, you're not going to be able to do them before the November election. But now's the time to start talking about it and see if some of these could be incorporated into your regular programming. However, and I really want to emphasize this, your group still has time to make sure your members are registered to vote and that they do vote. So be a resource to ensure all your members' votes are cast and counted in this election. You know, you're in Ohio. It now looks like Ohio is going to be a swing state. So your organization could get those votes out there to make a huge difference. So last, your group's civil engagement doesn't end on election day. After the election, please continue your civic involvement. Ask elected officials to talk to your group. Again, this increases our community's visibility and promotes the issues that are important to us. Ask former candidates to talk to your members about their campaigns. This builds relationships and perhaps encourages some of your members to run for office. Our PAC has information on endorsed candidates going back to 2014. Some of these folks might be great members of your organization at some point, so invite them in. And the Center for Freethought Equality has over 70 elected officials who identify with our community, who want and need to be better connected with the atheist community. So please invite some of them to speak to your group. So I really appreciate your participation in this meeting. As members of our community become more politically engaged and organized, we will empower our movement and increase our political clout. Our active political engagement will help to promote evidence-based public policy to effectively address issues that confront us, like climate change and the pandemic. Our active engagement will also increase the visibility of the atheist and humanist community and help diminish the lingering bias against us. Our active engagement will help build a society that we're proud to live in, but we all need to be engaged to do this. So, and if those aren't good enough reasons to become more politically engaged, just consider that your active political participation will help counter the white Christian nationalists that are far too powerful in our political culture and help bring their bigoted, anti-science, racist, misogynistic, xenophobic, and homophobic crusade to an end. And personally, this is what motivates me to get into work every day. So I hope it motivates some of you folks. So with that, I'll urge you again to become a member of the Center for Freethought Equality. Membership is still free, even in the last 15 minutes of my presentation. And I'm pleased to answer any questions you might have.
Ron, thank you very much. Round of applause to you from our muted lines. I'm glad we got this question because I was going to ask you anyway. What are your thoughts in general on the Supreme Court nominee? And how do you think this, how fair will this recent nominee be to non-Christians and especially non-theists?
Everything I've read about her, and I'm sure you guys have seen it too. I mean, she's with essentially a cult within the Catholic Church that brings in all this charismatic elements, you know, speaking in tongues and other things, and, you know, having handmaidens and male heads who, you know, approve and disapprove of things. It's really frightening. And, you know, she has said that, you know, because of her religious beliefs, she's going to recuse herself on death penalty cases. But she doesn't take that same stance with abortion rights. So yeah, no, this is tragic. And for the last 4 years, Trump has been stacking the courts with people like her because she was appointed prior. And it's going to be devastating. I mean, and it's going to be curious how we as a society deal with this, because these are long-term issues, having these lifetime appointments. So, you know, people are talking about things like putting term limits on. There's also talk about stacking the court. You know, whether these things would have repercussions that we wouldn't want to see, you know, it needs to be thought out. But it just emphasizes the need for us as a community to be more politically active, because the only way we're going to stop this is by electing officials who realize that we can't have white Christian nationalists. They've got, those folks have to be put back into the minority population. And we have, you know, the demographics are with us. We are growing and we can counter them, but we have to do it. We have to be organized. We have to be engaged. And, but no, this appointment is going to happen. There's no procedural way to stop it. They might be able to slow it for a few minutes or a couple of days, but no, it's tragic.
So you don't think there's any chance that we will be able to prevent it from going through before the election?
No, they'd have to get 2 more Republicans to vote no, and that's just not happening. Yeah, they should try to convince folks, but the cult of Trump is too strong, and the one thing elected officials fear is losing their jobs, and they know that if they go against Trump as a Republican, they could lose their jobs. That's why we see Lindsey Graham tumbling all over himself.
You know, during the 80s, the right became energized, and I think it was because, in general, the country had moved to the left, so it always energizes the group that's left out. But I think the court system and the liberal Supreme Court really helped to energize the right. Do you think a Supreme Court controlled by the right might have a silver lining of really energizing progressive groups again to become more active?
I would hope this appointment would put anybody who is, you know, on the fence to become more active. You know, because if we lose abortion rights, it becomes a state issue again. And so then the battle has to start in the states again. So it's paramount that we become more politically engaged.
Ron, what is the percentage that is needed to approve a Supreme Court justice? Is it just a majority or is it 60%?
No, it's just a majority.
Just a majority.
Yeah,
okay.
51 votes.
So we have another question. And I've noticed this is a kind of a recent occurrence, or at least maybe it's become more popular, that the religious community is starting to claim discrimination about some laws like access to contraception, and in other areas they're saying, or for gay rights, they're saying, oh, this is against our religious beliefs. So the question is, number one, how effective are these, and what can more progressive and secular and non-theist groups do to position ourselves and to show that actually we're the ones that are opposed to discrimination, not these false claims from the religious groups?
Right. Well, it really is to counter. I mean, the sad fact is, you know, as being a majority white Christian nation, it was fine to put down minority populations and put down gays and lesbians. And now they're like, wait, I'm not allowed to do that anymore. You can't step on my rights like that. I have the right as the majority population to discriminate. But now with the demographics changing, they're realizing they might be in the minority in the not too distant future. And they realized how they've treated people. So they're very fearful about how society might treat them in the future. So a lot of this is fear-based. A lot of this is a feeling that, you know, we had this dominance in the society for so long. You can't take away our supremacy. And it's, what we're doing, I think, is correct. You challenge it. You know, you make it plain that, you know, discrimination is not religious liberty.
Hold on one second. I'll just read this one because I haven't just popped up. Can you talk a bit about local offices, city council, school boards as a start into politics and the ability to make change locally? And actually, Ron, this is something we've talked about, is the right, again, thinking about what the right accomplished in the 80s and why in some ways they've been ascendant in recent years. It's because they started at the low level, at school boards, at local offices. So I think this question is, what should we be doing to, you know, really promote our candidates at the local level, not just focus on the federal level, and to create change locally as well as build that bench of people that can advance?
Yeah, and it's exactly what they did. They invested a great deal to get people into school boards, city councils, because that's your farm team to then move up to higher office. And it was incredibly effective. And they're reaping the rewards of that now. We need to do the same thing. We don't have the resources that they have to do that, but hopefully we will as we organize. We'll get more resources to do that. And the crazy thing is, and we rarely think about it, but for your day-to-day life, it's your local politicians who have so much more influence on what's happening, and we just ignore that. And so being involved in your local you know, community is so important. Know who your school board members are, know who your city council members are. And, you know, if they're not doing what they should be doing, run against them. You know, we need people to take that risk. It's a tough thing to do, to put yourself out there in a political campaign. But it can be really rewarding too. And, you know, I support a lot of candidates who, you know, they're running in very red districts, and people ask, you know, why do you do that? And it's because, again, it's building a network of people who've run for office. It's challenging the status quo, which we have to do. It's putting issues out there that sometimes people don't hear. In Virginia, we were a very red state for a long time. But then they started, because they didn't challenge, you know, entrenched incumbents. And then we started doing that. The 90s, we went purple. and now the state has went blue. So it's key not to let anybody go unchallenged, because there are people in that district who are going to align with the issues that candidates are talking about. They're going to realize they're not alone. They're going to become more involved. And again, you just grow the base.
Can you talk a little bit about what the Freethought Equality Fund, which is the political action committee that is part of the Center for Freethought Equality? I know it's a little bit convoluted, but there's a PAC that's associated with the organization that you lead. How does the PAC, how much does it focus on federal versus local candidates, and what is your whole strategy there? Because you've been talking in theory about what we can do, but another thing we can do is support the Freethought Equality Fund. But are you guys focused on the local level or only on federal candidates?
But when it was initially set up, I mean, it is a federal PAC. So when it was initially set up, it really was focused on, congressional candidates, trying to build more allies. I came on board in 2016, and I wanted to use it as a vehicle to reach out to more candidates. So, there's over 7,000 state legislators out there. And so I sent out to as many folks as I could, which I think was only like 6,000, to tell them about our community, give them a candidate questionnaire, and ask if they wanted to be endorsed by us. Now, as a federal PAC, we can't give money to, we can only give money to, in a very few instances, to state candidates as a federal PAC. But then we could ask our members to support the candidates that we endorse. And that's the reason we went from 5 to 50 candidates, simply because I started contacting people saying, there is an atheist and humanist community out there. We would love for you to be an ally. And if you're a member of our community, we'd love for you to be public. And people are eager. And so that's why we've had this increase. So if we build more resources, if we build some state PACs, which would be exciting, I think we could really take this much further.
So someone asked, who supports this PAC? And I don't know if this is getting now into where we can't get for a 501c3, but who supports it? Can we support it? Can people just become donors of the PAC? Who are the large donors right now, and how many donors do you have, and so forth?
Sure. We are a membership PAC, so you have to be a member of the Center for Freethought Equality to learn about what the PAC does. And then only members of the Center for Freethought Equality can donate to the PAC. And we are a tiny little PAC. I mean, I go to the various FEC meetings, and I'll be sitting around the table at the trainings, and there will be the people who have the the groundkeepers PAC at a golf club, and they talk about, we only had so many millions of dollars this year, to invest in candidates. It was really sad. And I'm like, yeah, we only invested a low tens of thousands in candidates this year. So let me tell you about struggles, my friend. So yeah, we don't disperse a lot of money. I think we did over 40K this year. And it's all funded by, again, members. Donations to PACs are limited to $5,000 per calendar year. So we have small donors, we have large donors. But again, it's all funded through members of the Center for Freethought Equality.
And it's largely people like us. I mean, all of us right now could join the Center for Freethought Equality and make a donation to the PAC if we wanted to, as well as a few large donors, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
So someone asked, I'm sorry, getting back to the Supreme Court candidate, I missed one question on that one. Somebody pointed out, it was actually Bill Messer, the head of our program committee, that she is actually a Catholic, not a Protestant, so she's actually a minority. Do you think there's any chance of her supporting separation of church and state, recognizing that she's actually in a minority position and Catholicism could be threatened?
No, because the majority of members of the Supreme Court are Catholic. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but they are the majority on the court. And, had this been, 100 years ago or 120 years ago, when Catholics were the looked down upon community, maybe she would have held different views. But but again, they became politically active and pushed candidates, and they've become a powerhouse. And what's most amusing to me is that church-state separation, for a long time, church-state separation was Baptists and other conservative Protestant groups fighting against Catholics from getting any money and taking away from the Protestants group. But then once school desegregation came about, your white Protestants were creating schools across the South and also in the North on occasion. And suddenly they had common cause with the Catholics that, well, maybe our schools should be funded, so we'll let the Catholic schools be funded too. So that was sort of the first break between the Protestants and Catholics on church-state separation. Then, of course, they had common cause with fighting against women because, they're second-class citizens and reproductive rights. And then, of course, LGBTQ rights either further solidified that unholy alliance. And so, but the one thing I always like to say is, our even the far right has gotten more inclusive, because 120 years ago, their siren call was, we're a Protestant nation, we're a Protestant nation. And now they say we're a Judeo-Christian nation. So I always say that even the far right now includes Jews and Catholics. So they're growing, they're becoming less intolerant to some groups. So, but even with this coalition they're formed, they're soon going to be in the minority, and we have to do everything we can to get them into that role politically as soon as possible. And again, demographics are with us. We can do this.
I've got a few more questions and some more follow-ups. Before I do, can you tell us just about I can't remember if you commented on this earlier. Can you tell us a little bit about how the demographics are changing, especially the emergence of nuns?
Well, since, for the longest time, we were just a blip when polling was done. And then in the early 2000s, I think, with the Four Horsemen and the creation of the internet, more and more people became comfortable with identifying with our community. They were finding groups like this to sit down and talk with. And now, it depends how you ask the question, how many of us are there? If it's strictly, do you believe in absolutely no higher power of any kind? We're about 10%. If you include folks who think, well, maybe, mathematics is the higher power, or nature's the higher power, or love's the higher power, then we start creeping into the 20-25% realm. So it is how the question is asked. But I saw a poll just a couple years ago about people who believed in, God as seen in the biblical sense, and it was just barely over 50%. Wow. And then there was this larger third of the population who was somewhere in the middle of some kind of higher power out there, and then 10% who said that there was no higher power. So I mean, we are growing, and I see this from candidates too. Younger candidates are much more confident about identifying with our community. It's really not an issue with them at all. And but the sad thing is we can't wait a couple generations. We've got to be active now.
Right. So I keep getting more questions about the PAC. It's called the Freethought Equality Fund, the Political Action Committee that advocates for not only atheist and non-theist candidates, but also for candidates who support the causes. And so questions, how many current members are there? And is the center interested in election reform?
We don't touch too much on election reform. Our main issues that we have on our candidate questionnaire are voting rights, LGBTQ issues, church-state issues, integrity of science issues, reproductive rights. So we don't go much further out than that. Membership is an issue because with a membership PAC, the FEC requires that people renew their membership in one way or another every year. So we probably have 8,000 people in our email list, but only 3,000 are active members as of today. And then, a smaller body of that are contributors to the PAC. But I mean, we're growing, and that's what we have to do. We just have to keep building year after year.
If we go to that link for the Center for Freethought Equality, we can join, and then we can contribute to the PAC.
Right. What happens is you join the Center for Freethought Equality. I send out a little message about who we are, what we do, and give you the various links. And yeah, then you become a member. You're a member of our cult then.
That's right. So some members of the non-theist community are very adversarial and say we should be totally separate, only working with other secular non-theist groups. But how do you feel about aligning and working with theistic groups that support our mission, like theistic groups that support separation of church and state?
No, I think it's key. Rachel Deitch, the lobbyist, does a lot of work. She's involved with a lot of various coalitions working on the issues that we
I'm sorry, Ron, she's the lobbyist for who?
For the Center for Freethought Equality.
Okay, so.
Yeah. And she also, AHA takes claim for her too, since we are the advocacy arm of the American Humanist Association. So you might know her better under AHA, but she does great work. And so she's involved with a whole lot of coalitional work. And again, her work increases our visibility. And actually what's interesting, she's been working on anti-blasphemy work, getting rid of anti-blasphemy laws across the world. And she's part of a coalition with a lot of people who we normally wouldn't be involved with, who are not, LGBTQ friendly or reproductive rights friendly. But we have common cause on that issue. But even that's changing people's minds. There was at one point, a person stood up and started railing against atheists. And one of her colleagues, who's with one of these far right groups, stood up, silenced the person, said that, that is not appropriate. We've been working, with Rachel, talked her out, because Rachel was like steeling herself, ready to get up to defend herself in the community, but she didn't have to because she'd built relationships. And even though we'll fight with them on every other issue out there, she can work with these folks on that one issue that we have in common. And so I think how much better it is when you're working with people who you have common cause with. So.
Right. I'll just mention, I think in any movement, there is room for the extreme, more militant groups who are pushing on things, but then you really do need groups that are that want a seat at the table, that are willing to work in coalitions. And I think the leadership and the role that the American Humanist Association and the Center for Freethought Equality have taken has really filled kind of that void in the atheist community. And I think that's why you all have been so effective. So I think it's important for us to be willing to sit down with religious people. It's just like, sorry if I give a little anecdote, I know this, I'm not supposed to be the one speaking, but when I lived in Cincinnati, I volunteered to be on the Speakers Bureau for the opposing the charter amendment, the anti-gay charter amendment. And one of the points of the Speakers Bureau was to get more gay people out in the community to speak openly, so people would just say, you know what, they're normal people just like us. What's funny, I was a straight male, and I didn't fit that because I sat in the back and I said, hey, is it okay if somebody who's straight speaks? But I think it was the same point, is we need to get out there and people need to realize just because you're an atheist doesn't mean you're some weirdo. You can still be a very nice, good person. So anyway, I think it's important for us to engage and be willing to work with people who have different points of view, but maybe support our overall causes.
Yeah, and there's lots of state and local groups that work on various issue advocacy, social justice alliances, and interfaith groups too. So yeah, making those relationships is really important.
So getting back to the demographics, somebody said they've heard creationists are near 40%, I assume, of the US population. Have you heard that those numbers? That would be really scary if that's the case.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true, but I mean, it's within the realm of possibility. I mean, if you still have a little over 50% believing in a biblical deity, then why not 40%?
I mean, the good side of that is it might be that 60% actually believe in evolution.
Right.
But that might be a little bit of a pipe dream. Let me ask you about the whole issue of the caucus, that was formed in the U.S. Congress, where you now have 12 members. Can you tell us a little bit about the challenge about forming the caucus? How difficult was that? How hard has it been to attract members? And, you know, is it drawing any attention? Are groups actually coming and seeking the caucus's support of bills, or is it just kind of a feel-good thing for our own people?
You know, it started out with 5, I think, and now we're up to 12. Obviously, it's not a high visibility caucus at this point, but you know, I think as it keeps growing, it will be. They've you know, done some work with you know, they send out messages to their colleagues under that banner on various issues. They've signed on to and maybe even filed amicus briefs of their own for the Supreme Court. They've held events at the Capitol on various issues that are important to us. And what is amusing to me is, you know, I was at one meeting where I think Daniel Dennett was speaking, and the Republican came and sat in, and he was, you know, he's a very, very, very conservative Republican. But he came in, he wanted to learn, he wanted to better understand his colleagues. And so I thought that was refreshing. You know, he wasn't there just to be an informant back to his caucus, but to actually was interested in learning more about us as a community. So that was very good.
So we have an interesting musing from someone. Does the election of a non-theist necessarily guarantee a progressive agenda? For example, the ending of imperial wars, the overthrow of progressive governments abroad. The comment was even some atheists like Sam Harris and Hitchens and others gave their consent and ideological platform to the war crime for basically the war against Iraq and the invasion of Iraq. But, you know, and heck, we could even take that further. The Communist Party in Russia and China are atheist. So does the election of a non-theist necessarily guarantee a progressive agenda?
Oh, definitely not. I mean, you know, the atheists are of all political stripes. And also I like to say that, you know, when you look at communism, that's sort of a religion in itself too. I mean, you have dogma there that, you know, substitutes religion. So, you know, when you have, and also hardcore capitalists, I mean, that invisible hand, that seems like a god to me too. But anyway, that's outside that question. So the one thing I like about being tied to 2 steps away from the American Humanist Association is that all our candidates have to be good on LGBTQ equality, have to be supportive of women's rights and reproductive rights. They have to support the integrity of science. They have to support the separation of church and state, or they don't get an endorsement. So, you know, at some point, you know, I hope that our community grows enough that there might be, you know, an advocacy group out there representing the right wing of the atheist community. But till now, since the majority of us are progressive, I'm glad that our PAC and advocacy group exists, and we will represent those folks.
Well, that's one of the defining principles of humanism, is not just rejection of gods, but also the implications that our worldview is informed by science and compassion, and then the progressive implications of that are part of what define humanism, and I assume then therefore define who the PAC endorses. You can't just be a non-theist, you also have to believe in at least some of the fundamental causes that we see as being a natural outgrowth of humanism.
Exactly. exactly. And I, you know, I have problems understanding how people could be swing voters at this point in the presidential election. I also have problems with people who don't see theism as being discriminatory against women, you know, against the other, because that's usually what it's all about, is the other. So, I mean, I think it's just a natural progression from being non-theist to being more humanistic to being more progressive. So I know it occurs. Just in my tiny mind, I can't imagine that it should or does, but I know there are those folks out there.
Hey, here's a fun question. What are the chances of restoring the Pledge of Allegiance back to its original state where it didn't have under God? We were just one nation, indivisible.
It'll be a while. And I don't think that should be our, you know, that shouldn't be top of our agenda. I mean, I think those are the types of things that you know, will come through once we become more engaged, have more political clout. Those things will just fall away. I think our messaging in you know, just civil rights, social justice are much more attractive, bring more people to the table. Now there are things that we can do, like you know, if you're being sworn in, you shouldn't have to say, "So help me God." And actually, there was in one of the environmental committees, the staff tried to remove some of that language, and there was a major uproar by Liz Cheney and some other folks being opposed to that, and it fell through. So we're not even powerful enough to get through a basic swearing in that you swear to the penalty of perjury rather than to the threat of God striking you dead if you start lying. So, you know, we've got work to do, folks.
So you talked about the work that your organization is doing, and that the lobbyist you mentioned is doing on international blasphemy laws. Is blasphemy a concern in the U.S.?
I would say no. It might be on the books in a couple places, but yeah, unless our court really goes far to the right, I can't imagine that would be upheld. But there are many things I can't imagine, simply because
Has there been any pushback on blasphemous art, for example? I don't know if you remember the days of the Piss Christ.
Oh yeah,
that was the
yes. That was Rudy Giuliani and friends, I believe. So yeah, there's always going to be sort of the part of the culture war, but and people removing funding from folks because they disapprove of the message being sent. But legally, I don't think we'll move in that direction again.
You know, there was a question about aligning with other groups. What groups have you used as a model, or do you see would be a good model for us to use to be effective and grow kind of the non-theistic progressive movement?
Well, I mean, the LGBT community has done amazing work over just a couple decades. And I think, you know, the work that they've done creating various political groups, they started out by creating lots of little state groups, even city groups that were political to get people mobilized. You know, they got recognized by the various political parties as a constituency. They have a really, really active political action committee that does tremendous trainings. Yeah, so I think they're an excellent recent model about how to do this right.
Do you think the religious right from the 80s and 90s is a good model for us also? In terms of effective organizing and building influence?
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, you know, working it from the school board level up. Although I would hope we would stay away from the fear politics that are so effective, and hope we would stay away from othering groups that we don't like. You know, the whole point is to remove the concept of others and make a more unified society.
And just to correct you here, Ron, it was Dick Armey Dick Armey, Jesse Helms, Alphonse D'Amato. I had forgotten about that guy. But it was President Bush who condemned blasphemous art. This was about the Piss Christ and the controversy there.
All right.
Bill Messer knows about these art things. Yeah, I have one more thing to ask you about. What can you comment on the presidential election? I know you can't endorse candidates, but can you talk to us a little bit about what you think is going to happen and how the election will play out?
This is just the most bizarre political time. Having a president who won't say that a transition is possible, the whole scope of the thing. That's just one of many insanities on top of a pandemic, on top of foreign interference in our election. It's maddening. And the key is just focus on what you can do as an individual to make sure your voice is heard and that your vote is counted. And again, it's about building a society that we want to live in. And we can't do that by sitting on the sidelines. We can't do that by just throwing up our hands and saying there's no use in this. We've got to be engaged. And if ever there was a time to be engaged, this might be it.
Let me ask the audience, are there more questions? I have a few more I could ask, but does anybody else have any questions they would like answered? We've gotten some great ones. And I think if I missed your question, feel free to throw it back into the chat. I think I got them all. Okay.
I'm asking folks to unmute if we can kind of maybe politely free for all.
Good.
Don't jump on each other. You know how to behave. We all do.
And since we're unmuting, I want to thank my friends Stuart and Stefan for joining from Boston for the very dedicated humanists and very good friends of mine. And I emailed them the information. They actually showed up.
Wow, I just got that.
And we brought friends with us.
All right, somebody's going crazy. I'm sorry. All right,
Yes,
you unmute yourselves, but not only if you're going to ask a question and behave.
Scott, I think you should go ahead and ask some of your questions.
Yeah, go ahead. You just have to unmute yourself. I'm not going to unmute everybody because I think I just unmuted someone who was having an argument in the background.
Well, I've already been peppering in a few of my questions. You know what I was interested in? I've heard from some of the, I hope this isn't a bad thing to call them, some of the old timers of the American Humanist Association have talked to me about some of the wars that they had in the 80s with what's his name, Jerry Falwell and the Moral Majority, and that actually Falwell was out to try to take out the American Humanist Association. And which surprised me because it was actually a smaller group back then, but I guess, they had Isaac Asimov as the president, so maybe it was a little higher profile. I'm wondering, do we have any opponents these days? Are we being noticed? Is anybody actively opposing us that we need to worry about? Or are we still below the radar screen mostly?
I think we really are below the radar screen at this point. Yeah. And they're getting everything they want on the Christian nationalist side, so they're not that worried. And voter suppression, they are targeting various groups, but I think our community is not one of those in their sights right now.
Yeah. Before we leave, it's slowing down a little bit. I invite everybody to go to our website, and I'm going to send out a report on this to tell you where the video is and how to see it, and all the links that Ron has given us, you'll have in your message. So if you're not going to get this message unless you go to our homepage and put your email address in and say, I want to hear from you guys. So do that. And if you feel really like you really want to help, go to the join page and give us some money. I'm still working on making that page work. But, and there's also a contact page in which you can tell us how you'd like to get involved. You've heard a lot of ways to get involved in this particular meeting. So go tell us how you'd like to get involved, and we'll be in touch with you. But if you want to know what's going on here, homepage, subscribe, and you'll hear about everything, including the report of this meeting.
GoFigure.org, right?
What's that?
GoFigure.org.
Yes, I'm sorry, gofigure.org or freeinquirygroup.org. They both,
Okay.
yeah, but you know, one's easier to type.
And you know, I live in Las Vegas now.
Yeah.
And I still support the Free Inquiry Group. It is really a great cause, either to support or to be involved in, or both.
Is that a question to? I'm sorry, what was? You expect a response from me? What's the, Andy?
No, I just put the website in the chat.
Oh yeah, gofigure.org. Thank you from Andy to everyone. Yeah. And, any other questions, comments?
Did I hear?
Rob, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Stuart?
Yeah, this is Stuart from Boston. Hi. Thanks, Ron. This is great. It's great to see you again. There was one thing I wanted to ask you. I wasn't sure whether to put it in the chat but I guess basically I wondered whether you think it's helpful to make statements like, well, you know, communism or extreme capitalism is religion, is like a religion or is a religion. Because I think we want to make a distinction between religion being something that we're trying to limit its influence and political thought or political ideology as something else. Because otherwise, religious people could just say, oh, well, we're just like all the liberals just have their own religion. Why are you trying to stop religions, you know?
Humanism is a religion. Right?
Yeah, they do say that. And in fact, we've had some of our colleagues here in the LGBT movement in Massachusetts really attack us, saying, you know, that communism is a religion, and that's what you're just leading to the Soviet Union and all this kind of stuff. And that's old school anti-communist type rhetoric that allowed us to put under God in the, you know, all over the place.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I overstepped there. You know, I'm just thinking about anything that has sort of firm dogma is something that the philosophical anarchist in me says that anything that has dogma in it needs to be questioned.
Yes.
Yuval Harari. Are you guys familiar with Harari? He wrote the book *Sapiens*.
I love that book. Oh, I love
that.
Yes, I've read it. Oh my God, great book.
Oh, it is. And you remember, so he talked about how strong political ideologies really not only are similar to religions, but they serve the same purpose.
Yeah.
That both political ideology, like really dogmatic ones, and religions are really designed to control people. And from that perspective, he said there really is no difference between communism or extreme capitalism and Catholicism or Judaism.
We put in our mission statement and our purpose. We oppose religion, superstition, and any form of dogma. We fought about that.
But I think Stuart's point is a good one. Now, whether it's effective for us from a political standpoint to go around calling other things religion, maybe that's not helpful because we're trying to oppose religion. It does kind of open ourselves up to it. But intellectually, I agree with it. But I think I agree with Stuart that probably not the best PR.
I think one of the big things is just to say about, you know, question everything. You know, you shouldn't believe in capitalism or communism or the Republican Party or the Democrat Party as you would a religion, you know, with blind faith. You should question every step of it, every member of it, everything, you know, as much as you can, you know. But I think that's where the line is questioning if you're falling into dogma in anything.
And religions all have superpowers. They all have supernatural, you know, powers with revealed truth, something that can't be questioned. It's from God. There's no more debate. So one of the great writers said, I'd rather have questions I can't answer than answers I can't question.
Whoa.
Oh,
Yes.
I don't know who said it, Dawkins or somebody, not me. But I use it all the time. Yeah, I think it's.
You know, Mandy and Peter and Ron and I are obviously involved in organizing this meeting, but anybody who hasn't had a chance to speak up, since we're in a little more informal stage now, if you'd like to just share whatever's on your mind or a question related to the topic or something else, feel free to jump in.
Just unmute. Put your face up too if you want.
Well, I almost feel like that disqualifies me from asking something, but.
Why?
Oh, jump in, man.
Come on, jump
Wait,
in.
Come on.
Bill.
so Ron, there was a Supreme Court justice who dealt with non-belief as a religion. He characterized it as a religion and felt that atheists should have the same protections that other religions have. And yet, as atheists, when we talk to people who think of us as a religion because they can't conceive of a world without religion, many of us try to explain to them, no, this is not about a belief. This is about non-belief. This is the absence of a religion, you know. In the Netherlands, atheism is treated as one of the many sort of groups of people who are entitled to a chunk of the government money to build things like the equivalent of YWCAs and stuff like that. Do you see any future in a concept like that?
I think for Supreme Court cases, when you're dealing with religious rights, you have to include those who don't have religious rights in that, you know, otherwise it's not a true right. And so that, you know, it came up in the early 60s with prayer in school, even more pointedly with in the 60s about, you know, you don't have to have a God belief to hold public office. There was a guy in Maryland who wanted to be a notary. Herb Silverman revisited this 30 years later in South Carolina, and the courts came down that, yes, the Constitution says there is no religious test for public office. So, you know, you can't enforce these, you know, state that still had it in their constitutions. So when you're dealing with rights, I think when you're dealing with religious rights, it's not really a right if you don't have the right not to believe in it. So we have to be included in that legal context. As for money being distributed, yeah, a lot of European countries had either state religions or they dole out money based on a percentage. And yeah, I mean, that's not been the practice in our country. I've mused that perhaps we should have had a state religion, because when you look at Europe, most everybody has rejected it. So maybe we would have rejected it earlier if we had a state religion, but that's just conjecture. So I think we just have to move at our pace here and again, organize and empower our community.
Good, thank you.
Somebody pointed out in the chat that another religion is Trumpism.
I read something today, Trumpism, and I don't understand this, is economic philosophies, but he's almost communistic in his centralized control of the economy, the way he's at least starting to try to attempt to force all control from his position. It's very totalitarian, very the way the communistic economies are run. Just an editorial I read today. I haven't absorbed it.
I think he's open to any authoritarian options, wherever they come from. They appeal to him.
This is Randy. A question. Do we have, or does the organization have any contacts with international like-minded groups? I mean, is there an international meeting or organization of free thinkers so that we know and can learn from the experiences of a similar, a Canadian group, for example, or how, you know, how Germans are doing it, or you mentioned Holland before.
We, as the Center for Freethought Equality, does not, but the American Humanists Association has, you know, international contacts. There's a large international humanist group, and in fact, had the AHA convention went on with their Miami event this summer, it would have been for the international humanist movement, but obviously the pandemic shut that down.
Well, they did the virtual speakers, so they did have some from different groups in other countries, and there was at least a couple speakers that was talking about some of the humanist refugee crises in certain areas too. So so that was really good to, if you want to look that up with the American Humanist Association. I think they still have that on their YouTube and stuff too.
But unlike the NRA, we don't want foreign funds into our politics, so we don't have any ties with any foreign organizations because we like to keep U.S. politics in U.S. politics.
U.S.-Russian politics.
That's right. Putin's puppet in charge.
Ron, where do you see your greatest opposition coming from, both covertly and overtly?
Well, obviously, you know, the white Christian nationalists are going to continue to spread fear and try to hold on to their power. So they are the biggest threat. And like I say, that's what motivates me to do this, because I've done church-state separation for several years now. The biggest problem within our community is apathy. You know, we got to get past that. We got to energize and invigorate ourselves to realize that we are a community, turn us into a movement, and a movement that has political clout. And that's why I'm out here preaching today.
Amen.
You know, on the
Hallelujah.
I'm concerned that that side is heavily armed, that they have armed militias, and that Trump has referred to that as.
Yeah. But so many generals have come in support of Biden and against Trump. I wonder where the big military stands and will go.
They're retired and they, you know, feel that they have nothing to risk. I don't trust the military.
Well, several generals in the military now, I don't know if they came out. I'd have to look at the article again. I just saw a headline where they've said if Trump tries to get the military to take action within the country, that they'll resign, which I think would be disastrous to his election.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to mention, when I heard you talk about community, atheism is the lack of belief, so it's not a religion. But humanism is a little bit more of a worldview. It is a belief system. It's that we believe that because we don't believe in God, and because we believe in science as the way to explain the world, that there are then natural conclusions that come out of that, or logical conclusions from that. So it leads to a worldview and or a belief system. So I wonder if there is a difference, first of all, between humanism and atheism, and does that put us kind of in the realm of not a religion, but maybe an ideology or at least a belief system? Is there something a little different about that?
Well, I mean, I think we organize around, you know, our common beliefs. And so, I mean, I think that's why we saw, you know, 20 years ago, or maybe even less time, you know, we spent 90% of our times fighting between atheists and humanists and brights. And, you know, we expended most of our energy fighting each other. And fortunately, you know, we got past that, and now we're more unified, because, you know, I don't want to revisit that period ever again. I want us to not care about the label, but let's care about the movement, care about the shared values that we want to promote. So I think, part of it is that we are more loosely united than other underrepresented groups, and that makes it harder to organize, obviously. But I think we're on a tipping point. I think we are definitely, simply because of what we're encountering with Christian nationalists, we're being forced to be more organized.
Anybody
one of
remember Eupraxiphy?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Eupraxiphy. Paul Kurtz had he wanted to call what we believe in eupraxiphy. I think it was something like that.
Yeah.
Good living, good life. Yeah.
One of the things we learned through this camp that we established years ago called Camp Quest was that sometimes the parents of a child where one of the parents was, say, Jewish and the other one was Catholic, and they kept yanking the kid back and forth between a Jewish summer camp or a Catholic summer camp, they found that an atheist camp was a really good solution for them. They were happy with it, and the kids felt wonderful. The kids were so happy to be free of all that. And it's possible that, it's possible that non-theists will become an attractive political solution, as the others become so extremely crazy, talking about, end times and whatever else.
I think one of the demographic trends Ron didn't mention was while we might be at 25%, depending on how you ask the question, population-wide among people, what is it, Ron, under 20? We're at 33% or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely the younger population is casting off religion at a far greater rate. But like I said before, we can't wait a couple generations for that to creep through society. We gotta start organizing now.
What do you think their motivation is for being non-religious?
I really do think the internet was huge to let people question things, find out more information. I think, like you're discussing, mixed marriages might also be a part of that too, where they realize that what's the substance there that is causing this strife. And I think just the examples of those who are religious in the public sphere dissuade a lot of people from, once religion becomes a power broker, it loses whatever moral authority it used to think it had. And in our country, you just look at some of the recent scandals and you see that it's not about religion. It's about personal profit, people doing whatever they want under the guise of religion. So that drives people away to hypocrisy. Who would have thought?
And I think with people being able to find others who are questioning or atheist, that helps, because that social network is so huge to be able to leave especially if they have a strong, church family, church group. There's a lot of things that people lose if they come out as atheist, if they don't know other atheists. So having those social networks, groups like this that are popping up everywhere, and the internet where people can find them, I think has been huge, not just to come to that conclusion, but then have the support to be more vocal about it and be out, basically.
Yeah, no, social networks are key.
Looks like
Are
Linda
there,
has.
are there any atheists? Are there any atheists who have come out as? Any athletes have come out as atheists to become role models? Because we certainly see a lot of overt celebration of religiosity by athletes.
There have been a couple. I think there were at least one or two football players, I think, if I remember correctly, but that's definitely not my area of expertise.
Okay.
Other people follow celebrities.
Yeah, Arian Foster was one of the football players that came out atheist not too long ago. I was just looking that up because I was like, I remembered, but I couldn't remember his name.
What does he
But
play
yeah.
for? What team is he on?
Let's see.
'Cause we have to figure out some sort of a non-theist celebration in the end zone for like football players and things.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Can I just say that there are a lot of people in the South. Can you hear me? Is it okay if I talk?
Yeah, sure, Linda.
Okay. There are a lot of people in the South who are Christian, quote, to the core. I have a son-in-law that was talking to me about, I was trying to talk with him about global warming. And he didn't seem to think that that was a problem because he has a brand new grandchild, my great-grandchild. Are you with me? And I said, well, but I want her to know the wonders of this world, the beauty of this world, the joys of this world, the diversity of this world. It's a great place. It's wonderful. We have to save this planet for her. And he said, oh, she'll be happier in heaven. Now, because my daughter was standing behind and going like this, I just said, well, and that's a thought too. So I had to let that go, but my God, this is my great-grandchild and the planet is in danger. And her grandfather said, so what? Do you all have friends who think that way, or is that just in Kentucky?
No, I know people who don't believe in global warming.
Oh, okay.
Who don't believe in the coronavirus.
Right. My grandson.
This guy, he's like, oh, it's just a big scam.
Yes, my grandson got married September the 5th. Over 250 people at the wedding. The only masks were on my husband and me as we stood to the back of all these crazy people up there and made our way away from them as far as we could get. But I wanted to see my grandson get married. You understand? It's my grandson. I have 4 grandkids, 2 boys, 2 girls. I wanted to see him get married, but I didn't want to get sick doing it. You understand? So it's really difficult when you live in these states where people don't really believe in science. Isn't that great? They don't believe in science. It's all right. I can't fix it. I can't fix it. I try. I was glad to see this group. This is the first time I've been here.
Oh.
It's okay that I spoke up. I'm glad to see that there are other people. I belong to Freedom from Religion Foundation, FFRF. I belong to American Atheists and Freethinkers. And I'm glad to find this group too, because the more people that think like I do, the less crazy I feel. Thank you.
Well spoken.
I'm glad you're here. Yeah.
Well
That's
spoken.
exactly, exactly how I felt when I lived in Cincinnati and I found the Free Inquiry group for the first time.
Right.
So Linda, you might
Yeah.
like to know that our last speaker last month was the legal director of the Freedom for Religion Foundation.
Right.
And she spoke to us about recent Supreme Court decisions affecting separation of church and state. She was terrific. So I'm sorry you didn't find out about that in time, but Peter, do we have that recorded?
But I'm here now.
Linda, if you want to go see that, go to the gofigure.org, click videos, and While you're on the homepage, join, and we'll send you information about all of our events. Just go skip around the website.
Wait, gofigure.org, and then what?
Videos.
Videos.
It's in the navigation bar up the top, in black.
Gotcha. All
Right.
right.
You should know that's not go figure. It's go F-I-G-G-E-R, go figure.
I got it.
It's a Kentucky pronunciation, you know.
It is a Kentucky pronunciation. It's kind of
Yeah.
like
But
I
if you-
said. I was doing my text to voice on my phone, and I said Hal, meaning H-A-L, and of course it came out H-O-W. So
Scott, can I ask you a question?
yes, sir.
ask me,
Yeah. I have a high school friend who,
Stephen.
who chooses the word denomination purposefully because he says that humanists and secularists have beliefs and have named them, and we are organized. They may not be rooted in a God, but they meet the definition of a religion.
No,
So,
you can't meet the definition of a religion if you don't believe in a God.
Religion is God.
So I wonder, Scott,
No.
you mentioned this earlier today, and I wonder if you could expand upon that a little bit.
Right, but isn't it interesting to hear how atheists and humanists react to that? No. See, I think there is a difference between a religion and a worldview, because a religion by definition is influenced by unsubstantiated beliefs, by belief in something that is designated to be true from outside the system, whether it's a deity or some fundamental principles. Well, you can have a belief system, such as humanism, that says we are informed by science, and we reject any kind of supernatural beliefs. So
Imaginary beliefs. Imaginary beliefs. Thank you very much.
Oh, and somebody, Brett and Randy, just suggested maybe it's philosophy is a better term. But, but I think we're not a religion, but we are a philosophy or a belief system. And that's why we deserve a seat at the table when different belief systems are being brought to the table. But what's fundamentally different about ours is we reject any kind of, as Linda said, made up beliefs or supernatural beliefs or superstitious beliefs.
Thank you, Scott.
What really
It
gets
has-
slippery, if you want to get really slippery, when you get down in the deepest epistemological question, when we believe in science, our belief is that our senses correspond with external reality. You have to believe that, because it could be something, it could all be a dream, right? There you go.
Well, the good thing about science is it changes. As we learn more, it changes.
Yes.
Religion stays the
Exactly.
same. It's.
Answers
That's
your
right.
question.
I'm not going to preach to the choir. You all already know this.
Religion does change, but it does so kicking and screaming, trying not to.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it does get confusing sometimes because, yeah, I mean, you can have non-deistic religions or religions without a god, like certain sects of Buddhism. They don't believe that Buddha was a god, but they do believe in those teachings, and it is a religion because they follow those teachings very strongly there, regardless of fact or other items.
Okay, they're the exception.
Right, and I'm sure there's others. It's just that's one I know of. And I know with even with humanism, there were some times that they did have to get some approval as a religion to be able to have chaplains in the military. So in order to have a non-religious therapist, basically to be able to speak to in the military, they had to fight to be recognized as a religion in order to serve troops. Because yeah, if troops typically, if they go to a regular therapist, they can get discharged and issues with that. But with a chaplain, that's protected under religion, and so they actually had to apply for that to be able to get help for a truth. So I think that muddied the water when some of that came out. And yeah, people just can't comprehend having beliefs in caring about others without a God or without their way of thinking.
Otherwise,
I'm sure,
it's true.
sure
Yeah, our country is founded on, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are blah, blah, blah. So it's a belief system. I mean, we have to have beliefs to go beyond ourselves and go somewhere better.
I think it's all people are created equal.
Oh yeah,
Nothing,
absolutely. Well,
nothing.
I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
Good point.
That's how it should be, but yeah, that wasn't how it was originally written.
Well, a bunch of white guys writing that paper. What can you expect?
Yeah, that actually ties into our next month's speaker, which will be Desiree Willis, who will be talking about women's suffrage.
Oh,
and the issue
yay!
with that, yeah. So that'll be a really good one.
And when is that meeting? Because I just found you all.
Yes, let's see. I can check
How
the date.
did you find us?
It just came up on my iPad, and I clicked on it right away because it sounded like people I'd like to know.
God's on our side.
I know. It sounds like some
God
kind of
wanted you to find us, Linda. God was looking out for you.
It was God's will.
Linda, even more pertinent, let me add, even more pertinent is our following speaker, who is a humanist chaplain at the University of Cincinnati.
Cool.
And addressing an issue that you raised, he's going to talk to us about how do you deal with your religious relatives at the holiday times. So,
Well,
just what you need.
fortunately, my parents and my sister are all in heaven, safely away from me. My children and grandchildren take things over, and I sit there like the old woman and nod. That's all I do. Write the checks to all the people. It's great.
I know how it feels.
So Ron, when we were talking about how you have to kind of almost assume the mantle or the identity of a religion in order to have a chaplain, and there are a lot of hoops that you probably have to jump through that you don't feel would necessarily be in a perfect world be appropriate for a secular humanist to have to deal with.
Well, I grew up in the UCC, which is a very liberal church that's kind of second cousins to the UU church. And I used to go to my minister and say, what are you talking about? You're using all that male language and blah, blah, blah. Drove this man insane. And, it was really fun. I had a good time. I learned a lot, and I backed out of the church. But my sister moved over to where I lived, and she was an exceptional human being. She died July the 1st, and she was older than I was. I introduced her to the church by saying, our maiden name was Gillette. I said that Bill and Jane had 2 daughters. This one, Suzanne, was the nice one. I was the other one, so look out.
Ornery one.
And they loved her. She loved them. It was great. She lived there for 12 years until she passed away this summer. And she was an absolute extraordinary, kind, loving human being. Unlike me, who is, I don't know, weird, just weird. That's all I could say, weird.
Normal is boring.
Pardon me?
Normal is boring.
Yes. Well, there's that. Thank you very much. But I love my sister. It's been a difficult time since I lost her this summer. And I'm glad to find your all's group. So I'm coming back next month, whether you like it or not.
All right.
We're glad to have you.
I think we should have Linda
Yeah,
as one of
sorry
our
for your
speakers
loss.
for one of these. Yeah, I actually have another question
Go ahead.
Yes.
in the group. Ron, can you let us know about your experiences that you might be having with other groups?
I belong to the American Atheist and Agnostic Association. I belong to FFRF. I go to a group on Sunday mornings called Reasonable Living, which is a group of, depends on who you ask. We're either atheist, humanist, secular humanist, whatever you want to call yourself. We are not Christians. And we call ourselves Atheist Sunday School on Sunday mornings from 10 to 11:30. And it's a great group in Louisville, Kentucky. And if you're ever in Kentucky, well, we used to meet, let me tell you this, we met at Molly Malone's, which was kind of a beer joint, but an upper level beer joint. We had, we could have mimosas for breakfast. It was great. And then we got the coronavirus. So now we meet on Zoom. It's not the same. I miss my friends. I'm way behind. I don't know if you're all aware of this, but the internet said every human being needs 11 hugs a day.
Ooh.
I am way, way behind.
I gotta tell my wife that.
And I need to see more people. I told my granddaughter that, one of my granddaughters, and she said, Pawpaw, step up. So
Linda, if the internet said it, it has to be right. But I think that the chat question actually was directed to Ron. So let's give him a chance to answer it.
Absolutely.
Did you get it?
Tell me again, what's the question?
Ron,
Yeah,
tell
right.
us about your experiences with that you might be having with other groups, like with
Answer just as colorfully.
Well, I mean, I've been reaching out to a lot of state groups, local groups, having conversations like these, which is great. We're starting to build some ties with the Victory Fund, and hopefully we'll do some work there. Because a lot of the candidates we endorse are obviously members of other types of groups. And so we want to build relations with other political action committees with common cause. And so, I think the Victory Fund is a great one, since a large portion of their membership are also part of our membership. So, I think we'll build relations there. And we get lots of nice little hate mail occasionally too. So that's fun.
Hate mail.
You have a fair number of younger members, or are you? We're pretty skewed toward an older membership.
Yeah, I can't really tell. We've never polled our members to do demographics, but I'm guessing that we look like the organizations we're part of. So we need to find ways to attract a younger audience. But I think it helps reaching out to the candidates and bringing them in,
Yes.
the younger candidates. So it will happen.
And it helps that Stuart's here. He's young. And Mandy.
No, it's totally an illusion. I shaved my head, so you can't tell how old I am.
Hey, Stuart,
So I recommend that all of you gray hairs, just shave it off. I have a comment for Scott. You were saying, I was surprised that you didn't answer the question immediately about what famous sports atheists there are, because there's quite a few UFC fighters who are atheists.
Oh, man.
I quickly looked them up, and among them are Frank Mir,
Oh, wow, he lives here too. I've met him a few
Yeah,
times.
how about that? And of all people, Dana White, who's like the president of UFC, unfortunately a Trumper, but he's an atheist apparently. And CM Punk of both mixed martial arts and professional wrestling, which is my favorite
Not very successful at mixed martial arts, though.
sport. Yeah, well, you know.
I think I could
Atheist.
even beat
Any
CM Punk.
atheist in a storm, right? We need publicity.
Yeah.
But I do think a lot of young people today are atheists, are fine being atheists, but unfortunately a lot of them are more like libertarian right-wing atheists.
Yeah.
And this is a problem that I think we're going to have to address, because if we really do attract young people, we're going to have a lot of those people who don't have the same liberal values that a lot of the community seems to share.
Yeah. Well, they're atheists, but not humanists.
To some degree, that's right. Yeah.
Part of the humanist philosophy is kind of believing in these progressive causes.
Yeah, and we also want to emphasize free thinking, free thought. It's in our name, free inquiry, as a philosophical viewpoint, if you like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which implies a lack of intolerance.
Oh, yes. Lack of intolerance.
A lack of intolerance and a lack of dogmatism. So we believe in science, but if God showed up and said, hey, look, I can prove it. Here I am. I'm God. I can do all this stuff. We would believe it because we believe in science. I mean, why would you not believe that?
Yeah.
It would no longer be supernatural. It would be natural.
Exactly. Right. It defines itself out of its own definition. Yes.
Most of what has been supernatural through the millennia has all been natural. I mean, everything is natural.
They keep finding more. Yeah, we just haven't found a natural explanation for some things that we can't explain, so we put them in the God bucket.
But
as Ron said, we backed them into a corner, so now they're terrified. Like they have nothing left to hold on to.
Yeah.
We think they have nothing left, but they'll surprise us, I'm sure. But it isn't just science. There's some groups in town. There's a group like ART, the Association of Rational Thought. It makes science absolutely preeminent, but we, in our little mission statement, it's one of the things I like being an artist. We talk about what's the wordage, Peter? Do you find it in there? Creative.
Let me go. I'll get it for you. It's right in our About page, and I have my thing up. And I'm going to read, to foster a community, our purpose, to foster a community of secular humanists dedicated to improving the human condition through rational inquiry and creative thinking unfettered by superstition, religion, or any form of dogma.
Right. Rational inquiry and creative thinking. And creative thinking isn't always rational. It's sometimes really bizarre.
Yeah.
And original, yeah.
And when you analyze what the invention or the new idea was, it's usually a combination or an altercation of something natural, we just didn't see before. So but to get there, you have to take irrational leaps, or intuitive leaps, maybe feels better.
Everyone,
so you enjoying this, Ron?
You've been great. Very good.
Yeah. Before we lose any more people, I would just like to personally, as the program guy, thank you and Scott for a great. We're encouraging more and more people to come up with ideas for programs, and then to take on the responsibility of researching and presenting those programs and hosting them. And I think Scott did a great job.
Excellent job, Scott. Excellent job.
Thank you very much.
Yes, great job, Scott.
Fun.
William was so good last time, I thought he should do it forever, but he said no. We need to let other people host. And Scott, I'm telling you, look out. He's coming up right behind you. He's breathing down your neck.
Have somebody else next time.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all.
Yeah. And thank you, Ron, of course. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I really do appreciate it. And Yep. Please go out there. Please vote. Make informed decisions. Get all your like-minded friends out to vote. We don't want everybody to vote. We want our like-minded friends to vote. So, encourage them. So please participate.
Good.
Well, that was skating the edge of the ice, wasn't it, just then?
Speaking from a pad, right?
I hope lots of us became members.
Thank you very much.
I hope lots of us
Great
became
seeing
members
everyone.
of the center tonight. I became a member of the center tonight, and I saw some other people did too. And I'll just make a plug for you again. It's free, everybody. It doesn't hurt your pocketbook to become a member and to become informed and play a part in the political role of being a non-theist and a humanist. And we do need to have some political clout. There's no question about it. If we're a quarter of the country, they should be listening to us a lot more than they are.
Yes.
Look for your report tomorrow. It'll have all of Ron's links in there so that you can get involved with them.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah, so definitely check out our website if you haven't already, and we'll see you next month. It'll be October 26th when Desiree will be speaking on women's suffrage, and Peter will get the link up there for Ron Millar's talk tonight. Thank you again, Ron, for coming and speak to us, and thank you, Scott, for hosting.
There we go.
Mandy.
Stop recording. 3, 2, 1.